I already clicked. Good morning, friends. Happy National Cream Cheese Day, or National Umbrella Day, or National Giving Hearts Day, or how about National Warranty Day? Okay. Today, I thought we would continue our talk on compliance and some of those 7 elements of compliance that we've been talking about the past few times together. And I thought this week we would take a look at the auditing and the monitoring process. Ooh, yes, I just saw a few of you shriek when I said that. Ooh, auditing and monitoring, Christine. I don't know anything about that. Well, you do, actually. So another area that you personally have a lot of experience in, yet it's often underutilized in a physician's practice. Let me share. So remember when you first took your driving test in order to get your driver's license, right? You studied the rules of the road, the signs. What did they mean? What did the roads on the lines on the roads mean, right? We all stop when the school bus stops and those big red flags come out, right? We all stop then. So we studied and we understand, and we took a test and we passed that test and we're doing well. So very much like your process in your office, you got the job, you know your job, you've studied your job, you do your job very, very well, right? But as far as traffic is concerned, we have our law enforcement, our traffic law enforcement, and they are there to conduct daily compliance audits. So sometimes when you come up to a street sign, you see that there's a cop there, or you don't see there's a cop there, and that could happen as well. So we know that there are people out there. We know that there are other compliance things that are in place, right? Our traffic lights, most of them have cameras that assist law enforcement in compliance, right? Have you ever gotten one of those tickets in the mail that said you ran a traffic light? No, I know that you didn't, but I mean, maybe you know somebody that did, right? Anyway, our type of traffic lights are usually called scrubbers or claim scrubbers, or we have something embedded in our EMRs that tell us when there are 2 codes that are reported together and they require a modifier because they have bundled components of each other. So that's kind of like those traffic lights, right? Also, we have those scrubbers that are built into our clearinghouses, and they help us identify those types of things. But you know what? That's not always going to be our fail safe, our scrubbers, our clearinghouse scrubs, reviewing that. So we need to start kind of looking internally and seeing what's going on. You kind of get what I mean, right? Another thing that we personally do in compliance is we do a lot of auditing. How about your gas mileage? Do you audit that? Good thing we have that little gauge in our car that helps us in auditing, right? That gauge that goes down to that little gas pump there that tells us we need to get more gas. So that in itself is another tool that we use in auditing how much gas we have before we run out of gas. That happened to someone in my family recently, not me, just saying. We also watch our power bills, right? Every month when the power bill comes in, how many of you go, oh my gosh, this is more than it was last month? Or I don't remember it being like this last year. So we're auditing or monitoring our power bills. How about your kids' grades? Every mom out there, every dad out there, you are always monitoring your kids' grades. So you're taking a look at that as well. That is auditing. That is monitoring. What happens when we don't meet the expectation or the guides that have been put in place for us? Well, If it's our gas tank, we pull over and get more gas. If it's the power bill, we start shutting lights off. If it's the kids' grades, we kind of pass that consequence forward, don't we? Same thing in compliance, same thing that we do. So, how do we implement this component of auditing and monitoring in our practices? That's a great question. So, think of the audit in your practice as a performance review, that annual performance review. You know, the one where you meet with your supervisor, you meet with the administrator, you meet with the decision makers in your organization, and they go over annually what they have audited or monitored as your strengths and areas of opportunity, right? Places where you can grow and become better. They also set goals for you and they lay out expectations. Most of the time, there's a reward. We get a raise or a promotion. Sometimes there's discipline, though, right? And that really just depends on what was audited, what was monitored, and what was the evaluation of that. So, when it comes to implementing auditing and monitoring in your practice, we have a lot of resources that are available to us. One of the most powerful resources that we have in overall compliance is called the Monitoring Compliance Program Effectiveness, a resource guide, and it's available through the OIG. And this is such an easy to use tool. It outlines a compliance program in your practice, and it does contain a really awesome step-by-step process for monitoring and auditing and internal reporting, right? So you can kind of see what's going on in your practice. So that is a wonderful tool that is available to us. When organizing an audit, there are a few things that you want to consider. What's the scope of the audit? What are we focusing on today? Perhaps we also want to focus on what's not going to be audited today. We want to do some data mining in our practice. It's a great way for us to identify some risks, some opportunities. It's going to start with some report running, right? We need to be looking at some things very strategically there. How about we look at a productivity report of CPT codes? So running a report of the CPT codes or the volume of CPT codes that were reported in a period of time. So maybe for the past 3 months, maybe the past 6 months, or maybe even that last year. What are the top 5 codes that are reported within your practice? So maybe it's evaluation and management codes. Maybe you're looking to see that we do a lot of 99215s. That might be a good place to start and see if the provider's documentation supports the codes that are reported there. Maybe we do a lot of biopsies in this office. Then that's another great place that we want to take a look at to see if we are doing it correctly, right? Does the provider's documentation or the reports that are being generated, do they support the codes that are identified there? So that is a great place. Another great place is when you run a report like that of all your codes, take a look at outliers. Is there something odd there? I recently was doing an audit for a GI practice, and I happened to notice that the GI practice, the provider had completed a depression screening and submitted the code for that. Not that a GI doctor can't do that. However, it was just a little odd. And I thought that's a good place to look and audit and see if that outlier has met the documentation requirements for that particular code that was reported. So that's another area that you want to take a look at. Maybe your high volume and maybe the outliers that you see. Is there a particular provider in the practice that you have identified that maybe has more denials than other providers in the practice? You could run a denial report. You could see what are the common denials that are being received in the office and processed in the office. That's another great way to identify a topic for audit. and monitoring there. Another wonderful place that you could look at is, was there a previous audit? Did they have a previous audit in the group? Go look at your compliance manual, your compliance plan. If there was a previous audit, it would be located there in your compliance planner program. Just reach out to your administrator, reach out to the compliance officer. Another great area, are there any new procedures or services that have been implemented in the office? So we know that during the public health emergency, certain requirements of payment have been waived. So we are able to do telehealth services in the office and do those telehealth services to our patients who are in their home, as opposed to being in a metropolitan provider shortage area, right? So maybe that's a good place to look at. Did we have consent for all of those telehealth services that have been provided under the public health emergency? I recently heard another amazing person do a presentation this week, and that was something that resonated with me very well, is identifying the requirements for these services that have been waived under the public health emergency and looking out for those. So that's another great place that you want to try to identify a scope of work, right? So either your top used codes, the outlier codes, a prior audit, new services, or new ways of doing services, right? So that's a super fantastic way. Another great way is look and see what other people are looking at. So the OIG, they post their current audits monthly. So everything that they're looking at, there's a wonderful link there that you can go directly to the work plan, and you can see those professional services that are being audited, or facility services, or specific areas that are being audited by the OIG. So they give you that every single month. They will show you what those current audits are, that work plan there. So that's a wonderful place to go, because if the OIG is looking into it, there's a really good chance that you should be looking into it too, especially if those are your services. Another area is to look at past OIG audits. So they'll have reports there. And in those reports, they tell you what they found and what they recommended. They recommended to CMS, or they recommended to the entity that audit was appropriate for. Did you know that right now there are 9 telehealth audits on the OIG's work plan? So if your practice did any telehealth at all, there's a pretty good chance that you might be part of an audit process. Another place that you want to look at is check out the RAC, the Recovery Audit Program. The Recovery Audit Program, they list their approved topics for auditing. They also provide you with all the topics that have previously been audited. And the wonderful part about the RAC is that they give you all of the resources that they are using to do the auditing. So you have the same resources that they have that are available to you. One that caught my eye recently was annual wellness visits and incorrect coding. If your practice is performing annual wellness visits, you may want to take a look at the RAC's resources. I'll say that 3 times. RAC's resources, yes. Okay, so check out the RAC's resources. They're going to give you the Medicare manuals that they are referencing. They will reference any MLN matters that they are referencing. They reference the Social Security Act and the Federal Registry. So they really do provide you with everything that you need to perform your own audit. All right. So the other thing you can look at is your Medicare administrative contractors. Oh, Rupa, you just told me something wonderful. Noridian has a free webinar on RAC today from 12 to 1. So check that out. Noridian RACs. Thanks so much, Rupa. I appreciate that. Again, right on topic. We have education available to us everywhere. Okay, so back to what I was telling you. Another great place that you can take a look at is your MAC. So the MACs provide a list of the current topics that are under review in Target, Probe, and Educate. So that is a new process that was developed in 2017, and it was to encourage education, identify risks that are with some certain providers. So maybe Medicare has identified some red flag areas with your reporting and have decided to start with the target probe and educate. So they ask for a certain amount of records, they review those records, and then they provide you with education and recommendations for those records that they have reviewed. So, you know what, Lexi? That's a really great topic for us to discuss on another Coding with Christine Hall, are the target probe and educates. Target Probe and Educates, they also provide you with checklists. So if you go to your Mac, my Mac happens to be First Coast Service Options, and you go to your Mac, they're going to give you a list of all the topics, but they're also going to give you a list of actual document checklist that you can go through and make sure that your document includes all of the metrics that have already been identified by CMS. Right? Let's work smarter, not harder. Another oldie but goodie is always going to be the OIG's compliance guidance for individual and small practice, small group physician practices. Whew. Okay, there are guidelines for hospitals, home health agencies, labs, third-party billing companies, DME, the Medicare Advantage organizations, nursing homes, ambulances, pharma. Is there anyone that I forgot? I think that kind of covers all of us, doesn't it? Right? So there are guidelines that are already in place there that we can go in and see all the recommendations in completing a compliance program for ourselves. Some of those areas that have already been identified. So, for example, in the individual and small group physician practices, they have details where they have already identified risk plans. They said that they look for billing for items and services that were not rendered or provided as claimed. They also identified that there were submitting claims for equipment, medical supplies, and services that are not reasonable and necessary. I think I've heard about that in the news recently. Double billing resulting in a duplicate payment. And sometimes this is not on purpose. I'll be honest with you. I don't know any doctors that submit duplicate claims with the intention of getting paid, right? But sometimes we might have an internal process that's not working, and it might be submitting duplicate batches to the clearinghouse for processing. So that would be an area that we would want to stop, because even though it's not going to cause an additional payment, it is kind of a waste of the payer's processes to process claims that were already processed once. Process. Yeah, I think that's right. Okay. Anyway, billing for non-covered services as if they were covered. They also identified knowing misusing of providers' identification numbers, which result in improper billing. So billing under another doctor's number for some reason. Unbundling or billing for each component of a service instead of billing and using an all-inclusive code. And that might be a modifier issue in your practice, or failing to properly use coding modifiers. So yeah, those are areas that have been identified by the OIG in 1998. So think about that. They've known this for a really long time. They've known that these are some of the areas that we often have problems with. Another area is clustering. So clustering means that you are billing based on an average. So today you submitted 5 99215s, 4 99214s, and 2 99213s, hoping that they all average out. Not a good thing. Upcoding the level of service that was provided. And I'll be honest with you, oftentimes this happens and it's not intentional. Right? If you're using a computer-assisted coding software in your EMR, maybe your EMR is recommending a level of service that is not always supported. And so it's presenting you with a higher code than what you may have expected, right? So once we have our scope of work in place, how do we begin this audit, right? So a few things you can do. Find your resources. Remember I told you RAC provides you with a list of resources? That's a good jumping off platform, right? So the Social Security Act, the federal registries. How about your Medicare manuals? Those are awesome, awesome. CPT and CPT description. We have the CPT assistant. Those are other areas that we can get additional resources to create a metrics, an expectation, right? Your national coverage determinations from Medicare, your local coverage determinations from your MACs, your local coverage articles from your MACs. That really helps out a lot with billing and coding. How about payer policies or even payer manuals and handbooks? I know that a lot of Medicaids call them handbooks out there. Take a look at the NCCI manuals. Those are really descriptive in those procedure to procedure or in the medically unlikely edits. So those are going to be in those manuals there. And as you know, a result, look at prior results of OIG audits, right? They already know what they've found and they've already put recommendations in. So those are good. Look for a good audit tool. We personally here at Stirling Global Solutions, we use Swift Audit. It's a wonderful online audit tool that we use for our E&Ms and we use for our risk adjustments. And I've heard through the grapevine that their development team has been busy on additional auditing resources. So keep an eye out with Swift Audit. They're movers and shakers right now. Even without an online audit tool, the AAPC also provides great E&M audit tools, both the new 2021 guidelines and the 95 and 97 guidelines. Organization like NAMAS, the National Association of Medical Auditors. So take a look at them. They also have a wonderful amount of auditing tools out there. But don't forget the MACs. Remember I told you Target, Probe, and Educate, they have checklists for a variety of different services. Don't just check your MAC, check the other MACs, Target, Probe, and Educate, to see if they also have developed an alternate checklist that you can use, right? So those are some wonderful, wonderful resources that you can tap into to help you in your personal audit plan in your office there. Now, once you have selected your scope and you've collected your resources and you've completed your audit of whatever that scope was, whether it's a evaluation and management or procedure or baseline, or, you know, it could be anything at that point that you've decided is a great place to start. You want to complete that. You want to review and assess the results of that. The AAPC recently published a wonderful audit accuracy paper. So if you're not familiar with what the expectations are of the results, this is a great resource for you to take a look at and see what your expectations should be. What is that pass rate threshold there? And what are the recommendations when our providers don't meet that pass threshold there? Based on those findings, you could consider re-education on those identified risks and opportunities, right? Often an audit is going to result in identifying areas that are not or maybe even underutilized. You might find that your provider often documents and supports reporting a separate code that hasn't been reported in the past. So you could also identify revenue opportunities for the practice. So that's good. When there's new revenue coming in a practice, that often means that we have new funds for bonuses, raises, promotions. Be smart, guys. Maybe the results uncover the need for an additional investigation or even suggest an overpayment situation. Because of these possibilities, I usually recommend that audits that you're not sure what the results might be, or perhaps that maybe we didn't do so well on a past audit, or audits in general, you can always have them performed under your attorney-client privilege. So reach out to your healthcare attorneys and have that review done as an engagement from your healthcare attorney. That way, if we do uncover any major issues or if there are any further guidances that are necessary, then those findings are protected under our attorney-client privilege, and they may not be subject to legal action in the event, or not legal action, but I should say used against you in a legal action, because they're protected under that attorney-client privilege. So after education and investigation, we need to put together a plan of action. So is it education? Is it an investigation? Is it an overpayment? And what's our plan to reevaluate? So you want to make sure that once you have identified problems and put a fix in place, that we go back and make sure that that fix stuck, right? Whether it be education or whether it be, something else like that. We always want to circle back and complete that circle. It reminds me of a movie that had a circle in it. Anyway, so that's just a little bit that you can go ahead and get started and implement in your practice. Everybody should be part of the audit process. We should look at areas that we can always be improving, right? And of course, part of compliance is making sure that we do things right. And these audits really are the answers to, I didn't know. So if there's something in your office that you didn't know, then maybe we do need to maybe increase the frequency of some of the audits that are done in the office, So that's an area there. Let's take a look at some of our questions that we have. I thank everybody for being here today. I know we're getting ready for Valentine's Day. I see all the hearts that are there on the background. So let's take a look at what we're doing here. Let's see some questions. I'm going to pass through here. Lexi, was there anything specifically that pops out at us? Okay, let's see. Yeah, there is one that came in here that said some of those top codes that you're going to identify by doing your data mining or running some strategic key performance indicator reports, KPI reports. A lot of practices have those higher level evaluation and management codes. It's not a bad idea to check the documentation, especially since we had new guidelines come out last year. So, while we had decades of 1995 and 97, we've only had 1 year of the new 2021 guidelines. So that's a wonderful place to start if you don't know where to start, right? So great recommendation there. I appreciate it. Let's see what else we have here. Oh, it was so nice to see everybody there. And again, Rupa, thank you so much for sharing with our listeners today that Noridian has a free webinar on Max, 12 to 1. Don't know if that's Eastern Standard Time, but that's a great place to look. Oh, Vanessa said there's also a guide for ambulatory surgical centers. I'm sorry I missed you guys. Thanks a lot, Vanessa. Vanessa, you are amazing, amazing. She is all knowledgeable about denials. So Vanessa Moldovan, she's also on our billing advisory committee for the AAPC. And she also says, I love how the OIG takes so much work out of preparing for an internal audit. They really do. Those resources that I shared with you from the OIG, those are worth their weight in gold. Let's see. Oh, Terry, you were the one who inspired me yesterday, by the way. I wanted to let you know that. You absolutely inspired me. Thank you so much for your presentation that you performed yesterday. So when a single provider doesn't have the resources, maybe there's not enough people in the office to do these types of audits, reach out to external consultants. External consultants, this is what we do all day, every day. Vanessa, Terry, myself, there's so many of us out there. Kimberly, I could name names all day long, guys. If you don't know a good external consultant, reach out to me. I can set you in place. Look for a consultant that specializes in your specialty. So if you need anything cardiology, reach out to Terry because she's the cardiology guru. but bring in an external auditor to come in and take a look at things. Often those auditors are trained to look outside of the box and provide you with recommendations that could bomb-proof your documentation from an audit, right? That's a wonderful area there. Terry also reminded me here that NAMAS has about 400 people that, is that 400 people on the webinar? Yeah. Oh, Terry, that's wonderful. So that is absolutely wonderful. But I know that there are thousands of people that belong to the NAMAS organization. That's the auditing organization, Shannon DeConda, lots of people out there. So reach out, definitely. Vanessa Moldovan has an amazing revenue cycle program that you can reach out to her and she can help you with. So lots of people, lots of names. It's just good to know and have your network put together of who you can reach out to and who you can access those resources from. So thank you so much for being here today with me. Everybody make sure that you have some cheesecake brownies today because it's National Cheesecake Brownie Day. And have a wonderful day. Thanks so much for being here with me. Next week, join me. I'm going to have a special guest on the show, and we're going to talk about denials and denial management. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Stay warm. Bye.
Thanks for watching.